All three flagship programs of CMFR are linked by the larger purpose and objective to help develop a free press that would serve as the fourth pillar of democracy in the Philippines. Our MC and moderator this morning is the founder and executive director of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility. Melinda Quintos de Jesus was among the women columnists of the Bulletin Today who wrote critically of the Marcos regime. After she was eased out of the job in 1983, she worked as editor of Veritas News Weekly, a news magazine on the front lines of the alternative press that galvanized public will to question the dictatorship. Her career in media includes columns for leading broadsheets, among them the Philippine Daily Inquirer and the Philippine Star. She co-hosted a political TV talk show with Jose Marie Velez and lawyer Perfecto Fernandez, as well as a column on the air for radio. She organized CMFR in 1989 and developed its core programs: media monitoring, press freedom protection, and the recognition of best practices in journalism. Ms. De Jesus is a founding member of the Board of Trustees of the Southeast Asian Press Alliance. She has served on the Council of the International Freedom of Expression Exchange and on the steering committee of the World Movement for Democracy. She was journalist in residence at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor and a fellow of the Shorenstein Center on the Press, Politics, and Public Policy, which is based in Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. In recognition of her journalistic work, Ms. De Jesus received the Benigno S. Aquino Jr. Fellowship for Professional Development and the Hildegard Award for Print Journalism.
Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us once again. For those who have been here before and for those who are first timers, welcome to our annual public event, a most happy occasion for us to be able to present journalists doing their best work, and if I may add, doing so in the midst of crisis. Honorable guests, the President of the Ateneo de Manila University, Father Roberto Yat of the Society of Jesus, the Honorable Charge d'Affaires of the Embassy of Canada in Manila, Mr. Colin Townsend, family and friends of the late Honorable Jaime V. Ongpin, co-workers in the media and in media development, friends, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility, a warm welcome to all to the third Jaime V. Ongpin Journalism Seminar online and the 32nd since the program was launched in 1990. This is the first time we are doing this on Zoom, but we have the same tech team from Learn that has helped CMFR to hold the digital program in 2020. We have responded to feedback from some of the audience who said they preferred to be able to ask questions verbally and not be limited to the chat mechanism. I am saying now then that as we start, we are looking forward to your active engagement as the success of this program requires great audience participation, who will engage journalists, panelists in a discussion of our current conditions, especially those concerning the media. We had considered going face to face, and I apologize to all those who are disappointed, but writing our proposals for support to our different programs or for our different programs has to be done way ahead of time. So given the quick ups and downs of our pandemic issues, we chose to play it safe and decided to stay in the digital mode, as the issue of unspent funds in our grants is always additional burden to worry about, that doing all the work plus doing all the work that makes it possible for us to hold this public event. Having gained a national audience during the pandemic, we will do what we can to keep the program connected to these communities in the future. This year, some news organizations are live streaming the program on Facebook. And so wherever you may be this morning, please feel free to post online about today's event using hashtag JVOJS in capital letters 2022. The feedback from so many more students, faculty, and other interested media watchers has made going digital truly gratifying. We have resolved that even when we go to a physical venue, as we pray we will be able to do next year, we will keep our virtual audience wherever they are. And for so long as we have outstanding journalists to present for recognition, we shall be happy to do the program from year to year. This, after all, is what gives us hope that despite the challenges that confront press freedom in our country, there are Filipino journalists who are giving us reason to believe that we will break out of the season of darkness into the light of a free press. At this time, I would like to introduce all the tertiary institutions who have registered themselves in the virtual hall. Assumption College, Central Mindanao University, De La Salle University, Far Eastern University, Mindanao State University in General Santos City, Mindanao State University in the Iligan State University of Technology, Miriam College, Notre Dame of the Jangas University, Nueva Ecija University of Science and Technology, Gabaldon Campus, Nueva Ecija University of Science and Technology, Sumacab, Maine, campus in Cabanatuan City. Nueva Ecija University of Science and Technology, San Isidro Campus. Pamantasan ng Lungsod ng Maynila, ng Muntinlupa, FINMA, Cagayan de Oro College, FINMA, University of Iloilo, FINMA, University of Pangasinan, Polytechnic University of the Philippines, Sorsogon State University, Saint Scholastica College, St. Paul University, Manila, University of Southern Mindanao, University of the Cordilleras, University of the East, University of the Philippines, Baguio, University of the Philippines, Diliman, and last but not least, the West Visayas State University. Welcome all to our program this morning, and we hope to hear from you and your representatives later on as we move to the different parts of what we have to do today. We had considered, we are joined on Facebook live by students and faculty as well. And unfortunately, we do not have yet the list of all those who are connected on FB. Our program this year, as in the past, will be in two parts. The first will hold the panel discussion and open forum, which is the main and the heart of the program. But the second part can't be a secondary part, as it is the presentation of certificates and announcement ceremonies. The Marshall McLuhan Fellow has been chosen by the Embassy of Canada and will be named by the Honorable Colin Townsend, to be followed by the presentation of the award of distinction given by the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility. Those attending the program for the first time should know that the program has evolved from its first incarnation. CMFR noted that after a lengthy period of controlled news and information, journalists regaining their autonomy needed encouragement, incentives to do the hard work of in-depth reporting, breaking through the surface of information about events, which answers the easy questions of who, what, when, and where, which are all important to get correct, to the more complex why or how. In the course of time, the program was expanded to include awards, not just for investigative, but also for explanatory reporting. The panelists or finalists were asked to talk about the issues and concerns encountered and represented in their work. The competition for awards may have been more exciting on that level. But in time, CMFR decided it was time to acknowledge the different kinds of reporting, and their best examples also deserve to be held up for recognition. And so we have our current version, still faithful to the objective of helping the public discern quality journalism, whether in print, in television, and online. We understand how recent surveys continue to find television as the main source among Filipinos for their political information. We have tried to identify those who do the work in the background, editors, for example, and on TV, those involved in producing the news and public affairs shows, which, however, involves a whole other kind of monitoring, but we will continue to try to bring these faces as well to be recognized by the public. The program itself then becomes a crash course, providing comprehensive understanding of the breadth and depth of journalism at work, its impact on the public and on political affairs, as well as its accommodation of these issues, and the struggle at times for those in media to try to swim against the tides as various objectives, including commercial and political, influence the practice itself. The program from year to year presents different kinds and different kinds of journalists, different types of journalism, and the different ways they are able to produce news and commentary, the best of which helps Filipinos to be better informed, more skeptical of what public officials have to say, and more curious about what current events and developments mean. The purpose of the program, therefore, goes beyond encouraging journalists to do quality work, fulfilling the role of the fourth estate, a pillar of democracy, effectively checking the exercise of power to prevent abuse of power. The press also serves as a sentinel, a guard, standing on a special perch in society to watch over the community it serves with information that will help them to protect themselves by future perils. The program then is designed to engage the public, help the people to become more discerning about the news content they follow. What is the subtext of what I've just said? Growing a quality press, which has become more difficult with social media and other tools of disinformation and misinformation, involves the crucial role of an engaged and critical consumers of the press. The JVO program is rare in that it does not require self-nomination or other forms of recommendation. CMFR undertakes as part of its flagship program to promote media ethics, a journalism review or media monitor, which allows us then to note the good and the not so good work, more strongly put, the works that deserve to be cheered or jeered, a process that has proved reliable in selecting the best and the brightest to participate in the program. The work of CMFR, after all, is to identify quality journalism and to encourage it, the kind that helps individuals become informed citizens and to be better prepared to engage in public affairs, and most important, in voting the representatives or leaders in government. So how do we choose the panelists? I am calling on Professor Luis Teodoro, who has served 2 terms as Dean of College of Mass Communication at the University of the Philippines. He has been teaching online for UP for the University of the Philippines since the first year of the lockdown. And Mr. Teodoro has been has continued to serve as our editorial consultant and my deputy in so many different ways. So I call on Mr. Teodoro, please.
Hi. Good morning to everyone. As in past years, the process through which MFR selects the panelists in the JBO Journalism Seminar began with a list of possibles drawn up by the staff of the Philippine Journalism Review Reports, or PJRR for short, CMFR's flagship, now online publication. A significant part of that list were the names of journalists whose work in the past year had been cheered in the PJRR Media Monitor section, both monitoring media performance and the selection of panelists being a year-long CMFR process. The PJRR reports staff then looked further into the list it had drawn up. There were 17 names in it initially, and refined it. From that list, a steering committee, the membership of which included, among others, senior journalists from the broadcast and print media, drew up in a virtual meeting a short list that was finalized during a second online meeting. As in previous years, the steering committee did not rely solely on the PJR reports monitor. Its members, because of their own familiarity with and insights into the work of individual journalists, nominated other practitioners the PJRR staff might have missed and who might not have been in the PJRR shortlist, but whom they thought also did exemplary work in the past year. The committee also decided on which media organization will receive the 2022 Award of Distinction and which journalist would be the Marshall McLuhan Fellow. PJR Reports, which is primarily a media monitoring publication in furtherance of encouraging best practice, and PJR, its antecedent, have been around for over 2 decades. I mention that fact to emphasize that the PJRR media monitors did not come into being and are not specifically intended to help draw up the final list of panelists in the JBO Journalism Seminar. Its main purpose is to recognize best practice and to criticize the bad, which it does in its media monitor or cheers and jeers section, as well as in full-length online articles. The PJRR monitors are nevertheless a helpful guide in drawing up at least part of the list of panelists. This year, as in the last 5, the steering committee members were only too aware of the problematic state of journalism because of the pandemic and the demands on reporting it and other issues as best as practitioners could, as well as the attacks on the individual journalists and media organizations. To be of any value, journalism demands independence of its practitioners, as well as meticulous attention to the imperatives of truth-telling through factual accuracy and contextualization. As in past years, the committee was guided in its choice of panelists by, among others, those ethical and professional standards of competent journalism. Finally, for everyone's information, the members of the selection committee this year were Tina Monzon Palma, ABS-CBN Foundation Program Director, Berhel Santos, former publisher and chair of the editorial board of Business World, Melinda Quintos de Jesus, Executive Director of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility, who also moderated the discussions, TV5 host and CMFR trustee Ed Lingaw, and myself.
Thank you, Professor Teodoro. As suggested by the process, we could and should have more journalists on our panel. But even in a real hall, physical venue, we could only seat so many at the table. Online, we can only include so many faces on screen. So are there journalists out there who could be sitting in this panel? Indeed, but these are the ones the jurors named for this year. And on the side of those invited, there have to be able to participate, as there are all kinds of circumstances which prevent their attendance themselves. Our intent is to be inclusive within the limits of the logistics at hand, and I can only hope that everyone appreciates these difficulties. The jurors all have backgrounds in journalism in its diversity of platforms and are familiar as well with new ways of doing news. The discussion can be contentious at times. I have withdrawn from the discussion because it adds to the tension, especially as we narrow the choices to the last or to the one last two places. But having moderated this program since its first inception in 1990, I am confident that the group we have today are prepared to provide a meaningful discussion in the next hour or so, hopefully one that will lead to engage them and to open the floor to questions and to comments. For everyone's comfort and convenience, we will call a 5-minute intermission so that we can all, wherever we are, stretch our legs and be more comfortable. I shall now call our panelists in alphabetical order of their last names. Christina Eloisa Baclig, Inquirer Net. Christina is a content researcher and writer for the Inquirer Focus section of Inquirer.net, using data from research, studies, and other references sources to tell the story. Her previous work includes writing news reports for the Daily Manila Shinbun, a Manila-based Japanese online newspaper where she managed the English language site. Christina finished her journalism degree at the University of Santo Tomas in 2018, where she started work as a campus journalist. Carmina Constantino, ABS-CBN. Carmina has been a journalist with the ABS-CBN news channel since 1996. She has written, produced, and anchored several documentaries, programs, and specials for ANC. Her recent work includes headlining ANC's 2022 election coverage and producing a segment in which presidential and vice presidential candidates were subjected to inquisitive questioning. Carmina currently anchors Dateline Philippines, ANC's noontime newscast. In June this year, she began her co-hosting duties on Teleradio's On the Spot, which discusses current events and public interest issues in light conversational Filipino or Filipino. Christian Esguerra, an independent journalist, formerly with ABS-CBN. Christian is a political journalist and educator. He hosts Facts First, a political talk show now streamed live on YouTube every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. His show discusses political government issues and is focused on correcting disinformation. He is the former anchor and managing editor of the hard-hitting political talk program After the Fact on the ABS-CBN News channel. His career, however, began in print, reporting for the Philippine Daily Inquirer in 2000, and he joined ABS-CBN as news correspondent and anchor in 2015. He teaches political reporting and journalism ethics at the University of Santo Tomas, where he is also a researcher at the Research Center for Culture, Arts, and Humanities. CMFR recognized Christian with the Award of Distinction in 2019. In 2020, he was named Marshall McLuhan Fellow by the Embassy of Canada in Manila in partnership with the JVO program. In 2019, he received the Titus Brandsma Award for Emergent Leadership in Journalism. Mean Los Baños, TV5. Mean is a senior correspondent for TV5. She covers the political beat, particularly the Philippine Senate, which she has followed since 2009. Mean has also covered elections and the campaign trail, state visits of former President Benigno Aquino, of then President Benigno Aquino III, and Rodrigo Duterte, and the Hong Kong protests in 2019. She currently anchors Frontline tonight and anchors the Saturday morning newscast Balita alas 5 sa Radio 5 on TV5's national radio platform. Mayan has been lecturer with the University of the Philippines College of Mass Communication since 2009, teaching courses on broadcast journalism, script writing, and public affairs. Mike Navalio, ABS-CBN. Mike Navalio is a multi-platform journalist for ABS-CBN News. He currently co-anchors the 7 a.m. edition of ANC's Rundown. As ABS-CBN's Justice Beat reporter, his recent work includes the ouster of Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Moreno, oral arguments on the petitions challenging the Anti-Terrorism Act, ABS-CBN's shut down the decision of the International Criminal Court to authorize the probe on President Duterte's war on drugs and the continuing detention of former Senator Laila de Lima. Mike has also produced special reports on the drug war. He was part of the team that produced War on Drugs, The Unheard Voices, which was recognized in 2017 by the Society of Publishers in Asia. Before joining ABS-CBN in 2015, Mike worked as a litigator for CICIP Law and as a research consultant for Amnesty International's research on police torture. Len Olea of Bulatlat. Len joined Bulatlat in 2008 and now its managing editor. An alternative news organization, Bulatlat reports on marginalized communities and their concerns, human rights, and other public interests issued sidelined by much of what makes it into the news. Len holds a master's degree in journalism at the Ateneo de Manila University, is current Secretary General of the National Union of Journalists of the Philippines and a founding member of Alter Media People's Media Network. She has written on human rights, impunity, and the justice system, working with the National Union of People's Lawyers and the International Association of Women in Radio and Television. And last but not least, Rambo Talabong of Rappler. Rambo is a multimedia reporter for Rappler. He previously covered the Philippine National Police, including Duterte's administration, war on drugs, and clashes between the military and terrorist groups in Mindanao. Rambo's more recent work includes reports on disinformation and propaganda under the Marcos administration, exploring social media platforms in his recent reporting of issues concerning martial law years and the Marcos family. Rambo is also part of Rappler's investigative team that produced the award-winning series Murder in Manila, a 7-part report on the extrajudicial killings of drug suspects by police-sanctioned vigilante gangs. A reminder to the panelists that after I ask the first question, I do encourage you to talk to one another's points, as your answers, which I have yet to hear, may suggest important issues and concerns. You do not need for me to ask a question, and you can bring forward an idea on your own. I don't have to say that these journalists, working under different circumstances, do recall the different passages in our recent history when members of the media had risen to the occasion to promote good government and to protect their autonomy. Every period creates a kind of journalism that addresses the issues and concerns of the current times. Journalists, although they report on what has happened, seem to be expected as well to be seers, to be able to look forward, and as called for by their role of public sentinel, to issue reports that warn of dangers that people must know about so that they can protect themselves. We do not talk so much about having to look at the past, but knowing and understanding the past makes for more astute interpretation of the signs of the times. We may all see the challenges differently. The loss of print primacy is clear. The changing audience is also obvious. The political pressures are exerted maybe not so uniformly and does not affect everyone in the same way, but on the whole, I think we are agreed that these have been experienced in recent years in the most or in more bolder terms. But we need to talk about the challenges and confront the press, some of which arise from government, from the public, and some of which from within. At a certain point, it may be necessary to examine how journalism can sustain the force of journalism that it has had the power to do in much of its history. Should journalists review the way they work so as to determine whether we need to renew, even reinvent the practice? And yet it is difficult to know whether we all hold a shared understanding of what is happening. What happens if we differ in our assessment of the challenges? My first question then, and I would like to ask you to answer in one sentence or as briefly as possible. What are the signs of the times? What sign do you want to talk about that you see as the greatest peril or the most serious of dangers confronting journalists and or the press community or the institution? As briefly as you can, altogether, I hope that the seven of you will draw a complete picture, a quick snapshot of the circumstances now in the journalist scene. And I want a response from each one. So just click to raise your hand, and hopefully I will be guided in the sequencing of who comes through. I don't need to call on you if you have your hand raised. Jester can also put you on screen as the speaker for the time. You need about a minute or 30 seconds to collect your thoughts.
Hi, ma'am.
Did I get a hi, ma'am? Yes, Christian.
Yes, ma'am.
Definitely. Thank you.
Not to sound bibo, but I just want to answer that. I guess that can be summed up in a line, which is all too common to all of us. We've experienced this one way or another. I think the biggest peril that we have now, aside from disinformation, is self-censorship, which is the worst form of censorship. The fact that we don't have to be told anymore by whoever is in power, by our media owners. Many of the journalists today are already doing self-censorship. And that is a very, very alarming reality. But the good thing is that despite that, which we saw quite heavily, especially during the last 6 years before the new president, I think there was a reawakening of sorts for many of our colleagues now, that there's no other choice but to push back. Not just hold the line, but to push back.
Thank you. Anyone to follow Christian? Yes, Carmina.
Hi, first of all, good morning to everyone here, to all the future journalists in this virtual room. Thank you for being with us today. And to my colleagues, hi, Christian, nice to see you again. I think one sign of the times is one that's always been there, but we have, I don't know, decided to turn a blind eye to it, or maybe we just adjusted it adjusted to it. But I think one sign of the times is that power will always find a way. It's always been there. Power will always find a way, and it's up to us what to do with that. This is not new. It happened to many journalists before. It happened during Tita Melinda's time. It happened even before then. So that is one sign that will never go away, that is consistent. And we should always address that fact that power will always find its way.
So we have two connected points: the power that is always there to exert itself on journalism or on the press, and out of that is the internal peril of self-censorship. Anything else you wish to specify in the range of those two general ideas? I have Man, and then I have
Morning.
Christina. Yes, please go
Good
on,
morning,
Man.
Ma'am Melinda. Good
Good
morning,
morning.
everyone. Yes, sign of the times, I think, challenge to and threat to freedom of the press with the recent killing of Percy Lapid and the continuous um, threats to community and local journalists. When there is a threat to freedom of the press, there is a threat to democracy because the main feature of for me, main feature of democracy is a free press that plays the role of a watchdog and source of information for many Filipinos. Um, Threats to life of journalists sends chilling effects. And another one for me, Melinda, is aside from threat to free press, it's the challenge to be present in all platforms. Gone were the days when you are a TV reporter and you just need to be present on live reports for TV. Right now, when we go on field, we need to be present on Twitter, on Facebook, on TV, on radio. This is something that is out of our comfort zone, but we're willing to um, let go and to sacrifice comfort for the sake of truth, just to be present in all platforms that are usually, for example, social media, platform that is usually dominated with propagandists, influencers, and even trolls.
Thank you, Man. So we have here the continuing threats, and definitely the case of Percy Lapid is a standout case that we should not allow to just be sidelined because of his prominence in the national scene and how he had gained so much of a following on YouTube, actually, and that someone will dare. Usually we think of these attacks as something happening in more remote areas where hopefully they are not much national attention is called on, something that those working in media development have been trying to prevent. And you've also brought out an internal issue, spreading your resources, spreading out your energy so that you can be present in all the different ways that is required in the current scene is a peril because you may not be doing then what, according to your standards, I think this is the point of Mayan, you're having to struggle to do the best in so many different ways. The hand of Christina, and then now I have Mike also to follow Christina, and then we will have Len and Rambo.
Good morning, Ma'am
sorry.
Melinda, and good morning, everyone. I'd like to add lang to what Sir Esguerra mentioned earlier. I think there are still pressures directed towards journalists and even newsrooms to slow down and go easy on reports that might be tagged as too critical of the government. And I think this is alarming, especially for younger journalists, because it discourages them to do more or to explore more on what they can write. And especially this is very relevant kasi sa recent media attacks and threats po.
Definitely, I'm glad you specified that particular what happens when there are messages sent to you, and that you no longer then want to venture beyond the safe limits of reporting so as not to call attention to whatever issues there are. Thank you for that, Christina. I had Mike, and yes, I did not actually see the hand of Len or Rambo yet, and so there is no sequencing there. You can choose who of you will go and follow Mike. Mike, let's hear from you.
Good morning, Ma'am Melinda. Good morning, everyone. I would say the loss of trust in traditional media is one of the biggest challenges that we all have to face. It could be a result of a number of factors. The constant attacks by people in power in the past couple of years has slowly eroded credibility of the media, but also the rise of other information sources. The rise of social media users, even vloggers, have challenged the dominance of traditional media to gatekeep information to the public. So it's now a question of how do we compete with all the sources of information to stay afloat and remain credible, and help try to shape the conversation, particularly in the challenge to address this information.
Thank you for that point, Mike. Definitely the radical change, transformation of the media landscape is in itself a sign, a peril, a danger in itself, because what you have to say may be the most significant thing, and yet it will sink into the deep bottom of the deep blue sea, because people who are listening are being bombarded by all other kinds of information. And it is something that the media themselves, or us, or the journalists cannot do very much about. And this I call attention of those in the audience who are outside of the media, that there is a role to be played as well by these sectors. Whose shall I call now? Rambo, Len.
I can start. I can start po.
Okay, fine. Very good. Thank you, Rambo.
I agree with everything that my co-panelists have said. As in, we're painting a pretty dark picture, but it really is what we have to fight with every day. From where I'm standing and where I'm reporting, what is existential when it comes to my reporting and in our newsroom is this new dynamic with the audience. How participative it is, and not just participative, but how the audience has become adversarial to the press as well. And this concerns the propaganda that's also spread by the government and their supporters. Aside from pressure from the government themselves, we face pressure from a misled audience, an audience that has been victimized by disinformation. We journalists have been told, who are you? What do you do? How do you know what you know? What the hell is verification? These are things that shouldn't be asked with journalists, but the past election has been a reckoning for our understanding of media literacy and our understanding of the audience. I think this is also a guide question for us reporters and journalists and presenters. How do we act in the face of an audience that distrusts us, even hates us? People who would comment and go as far as attack us in our message inboxes, threatening our lives, and even killing one of our fellow journalists, Percy Lapid, for speaking out truth and being critical. So that's my concern.
It is a definite concern, and thank you for bringing it up quite as visually as you have, because you do react to the feedback. And if you feel that you have lost their trust and their credibility, everyone says, well, go and regain that credibility, but it is much more difficult, not so easy to do in the current environment of media, because the audience that we're talking about, or the public that we're talking about, are bombarded constantly by other pressures. And finally, not the least, Len?
Hello, good morning. Yes, I agree with all the points raised by my fellow panelists today. Yes, there has been a deliberate and systematic campaign to discredit and demonize the media. So aside from pushing back, we also need solidarity. We need to close our ranks. We need to organize ourselves to be able to respond to these attacks. And of course, as pointed out by Rambo, we need to think of ways to engage the public effectively, because they have a big role to play in defending the profession. We have come to the point where we need to defend journalism and its vital role in a democracy.
Thank you, Len, and thank you everyone for such a strong opening. I would like to pursue those 2 points just now mentioned, because I think it reflects on all the other concerns that were noted also by other panelists. One, the need for solidarity within the media. One, it's a highly competitive field. Even before the opening of social media, the rivalries were such that one could hardly, even your audience had to be branded as to which group was being followed, who you were following. And so the idea of solidarity is something that I think we need to talk about. And the other issue that was brought up was then how do you engage as well the public that is out there, and the kind of engagement that will enliven the connection, so that you have the public behind you or a strong enough critical mass to support you.
Mm.
You can take these two ideas anywhere and which way you want, and I am waiting for your responses. We're talking both of external and internal here, I think, and so you can speak up and say things, what you have to say.
All right, can I just start and
Sure.
just jump off from what Rambo was saying a while ago? That I'm not really comfortable with the fact that these attacks are coming from the masses. I think there's a different way of looking at it. I think essentially, isn't that what we want? That power emanates from the masses. But the problem here is that they're basing that power off of disinformation. So how do we engage them? I think the foremost thing that we should do, and this is what I think has been lacking because of all the rivalry that's been happening, is that we have failed to be empathetic to the public that we serve. And that I think is the reason why it's become sort of an us against them when it should be one and the same. We serve them. We are here so that they can be free to make decisions that can affect themselves and their lives. So there's a big problem right there. And I think that all emanated from, there was just this breakdown of empathy. There was just this breakdown of informing them as if we were on top of them, as if we are lording over them.
Okay.
When we should be right there with them and wanting to know what is the information that they need so they can better their lives. We don't dictate upon them. We lead
Okay.
with them.
So the sense of the press as being part of the establishment, that it is in itself a power community, that it is engaged with those who hold power, can sometimes draw that separation line. I think Carmina is actually approaching that negative feedback that we have been getting. We need to be more connected and more empathetic. We need to be more concerned about what that public has to do. Anyone wishes to speak further on any of these points or bring up another issue?
I think, yes, ma'am, hi.
Go ahead.
I think aside from the distrust to the legitimate news media, we should recognize that people are confused with so many information coming in from different sources that they could not even sometimes or many times recognize what is legitimate news, what is fake news, what is this information, what is just going viral. And in this day and age, now more than ever, we need to let them see that we, the legitimate journalists, are accountable and responsible for the reports that we produce. That is what makes us different from the vloggers and from other content creators. I'm not belittling their content, but what I'm saying is we show them our faces. We give them reports with our real names on it. We are not like those other people on social media who give reports or who give content with fake pictures and fake names. We have to let them see that we hold on to the highest standards of journalism. And my last point on this is that we cannot do this alone. I think we have also to recognize that the government could help us to protect and respect the journalists, knowing that we came from a 6-year administration that is very hostile to the media. And it did not help because the president prior to this one that we have right now, was the one saying and tagging journalists as Dilawan and as Bayaran and as bias. So right now, it's not just us holding the line. The government should also help us, trust us, and let people and allow us to criticize, allow us to do our job freely.
Okay, so you're saying now that government needs to be part of the whole engagement process. What are the prospects of that happening, do you think? If we are reading the signs of the times, if you want to go this path or you don't want to go to this path, go, I mean, it's up to you.
Let me just, yeah,
No,
go ahead.
no, I believe you. I agree with you
Mhm.
that
I think,
the work of the press, the synergy with working with government is embedded in the work of the press. And so a hostile government makes it much, much more difficult to do what needs to be done, for sure. What are your expectations, therefore, to get back? Is that okay? Mayan, you're comfortable with how I
Yeah.
understood your point? Yeah.
yes, sure. And sorry, just to add a little, the Marcos administration, President Marcos, whether he likes it or not, he's inheriting the situation and the policies left by President Duterte. And what he can do right now, I hope his behavior would be different from his behavior during the campaign when information are very much limited. I hope he can open the gates of information, allow the media, allow the reporters to interview him, and allow us to see it and be transparent about what his government is doing. That's something that's simple. I guess that's a
Sure.
big help for Australians.
That would be a positive sign if we got something like that about the future of media government relationship, that it should be fruitful and productive. It doesn't have to be come to the point where you just can't work with one another because of this position taken by one or the other. Any other thoughts on this issue of pursuing engagement with government? Yes,
May I
Christian,
add, ma'am?
go ahead,
First,
please.
I'd like to greet Carmina. I forgot to return the favor. I miss that voice.
Stop it.
Suabe. Masyado,
natanggal ko tuloy yung sarili ko.
masyado kasi formal yung discussion eh. Anyway, I have 2 points. No? So number 1 is authenticity. And number 2, I'm going to answer that question or that point regarding the new administration. I think it's really a problem. I don't have easy answers here. And I don't think any one of us can provide easy answers as to better engage the audiences today. Kasi nga, we have been castrated, sadly, by the previous administration. And the new administration has been enjoying, quote unquote, for its purpose, that kind of situation that we are in now.
Mhm.
Ang hirap mag-engage ngayon sa public. For example, now, we all agree with what each of us has been saying. And for all we know, and I think this is definitely true, we're speaking within our own big information bubble. We're not crossing over. For example, on Facebook, can you imagine who else is watching this? Or who else would believe this? Let's say the moment they saw my name, the face of Carmina, of Rambo, etc., they would automatically turn off their devices, no, or go to other sources. So I think it's also a challenge for us to reevaluate the different ways of telling the news. Because coming from print, I was reluctant at the beginning because of my discipline. And then I realized there are many other ways to tell the story or tell stories. That's why it's good to be in the company of younger journalists now who are more adept and more comfortable with the other platforms. Tapos one irony that I've been noticing, many of the vloggers out there who are spreading this information are actually getting a lot of followers or subscribers because of their so-called authenticity, which is a basic value in terms of getting noticed and being credible, quote unquote, social media. But imagine using that idea of authenticity to spread fake information or disinformation. This also brings the issue back to us. For example, news anchors now, even print reporters, are seen as inauthentic, masyadong canned, di ba? The fact that
Lara.
we have to focus on what things are being said, the studio setup, the lighting, etc. These things don't matter actually compared to how those on social media, their rawness, their authenticity, are expressing themselves. So that's number 1. Number 2, dun sa point ng the prospects under the current administration. Honestly, I've been trying to be very, very optimistic. I've been trying to give the new administration the benefit of the doubt in many aspects of governance now because there's no other way. We have to give them the benefit of the doubt. But in terms of dealing with press freedom, I think he's having it easy because he saw the template under President Duterte. President Duterte was able to shut down the biggest broadcast station on free TV and free radio without having to padlock the doors or the gates of ABS-CBN. He did that with a lot of disinformation, di ba? Siya yung pinaka nagkalat ng kalokohang information about ABS-CBN. He did that by threatening members of the press. So basically, he paved the way for whoever would follow him. And fortunately for him, someone aligned with his politics followed him. So ngayon, President Marcos is having it easy. He doesn't have to attack the press really. He can say
It's already
anything he
done.
wants. He
Yeah.
doesn't have to spread disinformation himself because other people are doing that for him. The
Yes.
troll networks have been doing that for him. So he can do no wrong
The troll
as far as the
networks,
situation is concerned.
and he has the legislators as well to continue the work of suppressing, all kinds of ventures and
Yeah, that's a
putting
given. The
that
SICO
as
funds
stop,
in Congress. Yeah.
Right. So, yes, he does not have to do anything much. So when people are saying that, well, at least it looks good because he's not really going after them. Well, he didn't. He doesn't have to anymore. I think that's the point that we want to put forward. He doesn't have to anymore. It's been done. And it was done in the last 6 years. And it was done rather well. And we need to all work together to try and find out how we can get out of that, wherever we were placed in some cave. How do we get out of that into the light? And so anyone else wishes to follow on this issue? Rambo, we were talking about having to hear from the younger who are more fluent in the idioms of these new platforms. Let's talk about finding new ways of doing what we have to do.
To Christian's point really on authenticity, I think one of the things that has helped me a lot is to consume what the audience is consuming. It has come to a point during the election season where this might sound cringy, that I found Sandra Marcos attractive as a person because of the amount of TikToks that I was consuming concerning Sandra Marcos and the Marcoses. I was consuming so much Marcos content just to understand what were the myths that were
That it really works.
and how is it working? What are the words that they are using? What is the pacing? And these are the things that you will only learn not through reading, but actually consuming the content. And so that you can, it's not that fighting fire with fire, lies with lies, but fighting their language in our language, but with our standards. And I do recognize that our work is only the beginning. One thing that I realized under this election cycle, and again, to our point, we're still reeling from this election cycle, is that the TikTok, engaging the audience authentically, it just proves a point where we can't just keep on doing what we're used to doing. We have to go to places we're not used to. We have to embrace what is cringy, what is not in the ivory tower, what can sound as cheap to many fellow reporters who have been reporting, for example, in high places. Another point that I would like to raise when it comes to working with the government, what's concerning is that they don't really have to do a lot of things now to shut us down. They're just making us irrelevant. We have a president who would rather vlog than to hold a press conference, who would rather harbor a vlogger with him in different places in New York and wherever he's going, rather than inviting more journalists, where you have an administration where leaks and information is being passed on to vloggers rather than trusted journalists. And we're seeing that play out in how Malacanang has been acting recently, the recent firings and the influencers being part of those movements. That's another question that I keep on asking myself, is if we, even if we try to engage, if we try to fight back, the government doesn't really have to move. They already have an army to make us irrelevant, and the people are already conditioned to think that, and who are really born into a world where in a democracy, we don't need the press. We only need influencers, and I will stick to this influencer.
And let me ask a question then. Why isn't this out in the news? This is news about the media. This is news about the president continuing from the old and maybe even making it a little bit more smooth and slick, because he doesn't have to do anything, but it continues. The story about the media is a story that needs to be known by everyone. And it is here now as we are speaking and we are talking about it. You yourselves are the sources of what is going on. And those of other people that have said, well, at least he's not doing what Mr. Duterte did. Well, he doesn't have to. It's been done. And I think that's a story that journalists should write about. I mean, a real development in media development has been that media reports on media trends and issues. And I would love to encourage that from everyone else. Coming down from the ivory tower, says someone in our chat box, to popularize the news. Popularizing the news, what peril is in popularizing? How far do you popularize when you're talking about the economy, etc.? And this is an opening for some of the other difficulties that you are facing, if you wish to speak to that. I am now preparing to close our panel discussion and open up to the open forum. As we have promised our audience, they will be able to ask you questions as well. Yes? Nothing much more to say?
I have one.
Yes, Len and then Carmina. Len?
Yeah, I think we've been talking about.
Sorry, Carmina. I called on Len, sorry.
Oh, I'm
I
so
wasn't
sorry.
No, I know. It's not your problem. Len and then Carmina, I will call you.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Anyway, I would just like to point out some what I see as silver lining in the past few years. Mama Melinda asked us about what kind of solidarity do we need today, and we have witnessed how journalists from different media organizations supported ABS-CBN during the shutdown. So Kapamilya, Kapatid, Kapuso, all going to Esguerra, every Friday night. So that is, I consider a silver lining. But of course, we can do so much more, such as writing stories about the attacks on our colleagues, providing whatever support. And I speak from my own experience, because after I was red tagged, I was really overwhelmed by the messages I got from colleagues when Bulatlat was subjected to cyber attacks and DNS blocking. We were also overwhelmed by the support of our colleagues and the public in general, who pitched in to raise the 100,000 pesos bond, which is not a small amount. So we see this as positive small steps, and we can also share our stories, share each other's stories, to be able to encourage to do good journalism. So internally, I think we can do so much in preserving our profession, in encouraging our colleagues to stay in this industry, because as we all know, it has been really toxic in the past few years, and especially since the election. So we all need that kind of support from one another. And externally, of course, we need all the support from the public in whatever ways they can, by sharing our stories, by engaging the academe, the church institution, and other organizations who would be with us in defending truth and democracy.
Thank you, Len. I have Carmina. Go back to Carmina again. Thank you.
Thank you. And Len, we support you all the way from day one of when the news broke out, from day one when you were red tagged. We were there for you until the end, and we will continue to be with each and every one of our colleagues until, that this fight is never done. What I'm about to say is that we're talking about press freedom now and attacks on press freedom now. But really the big picture is, has the press really been free in this country? I think we have to understand that for as long as news organizations are owned by big businesses, partly because they're there to protect their own interests, can we really say that the press is actually free? But having said that, for the precious minutes that you're on air, for that time of night when you're writing your story, a journalist has to be at his freest. You tell the story through interviews, through questions during that time that you are on air or you're writing your story or you're writing your interviews. That's where real press freedom exists, because it doesn't exist. We don't exist in a vacuum. There are external forces, right? And internal forces as well. But at that time when we're doing our broadcast, writing those scripts, we have to be at our freest. And then just deal with the consequences later.
Do it and face the music after.
Exactly. Just be brave and be bold and let that be your shield.
Right. That is a challenge. That
Hi,
is a
ma'am.
challenge indeed. Yes, Christian, are we going to give you the last word before we
Hindi, very
open up
short
to the
lang. Gusto ko
forum?
lang dagdagan yung sinabi ni Carmina. No? That's a very good point. No? Relish your freedom for as long as it lasts. Because I know for a fact that, Carmina, I hope you don't mind, that you have been fighting to do the kind of journalism that you do, despite the odds. No? In my case, I fought for as long as I could from inside. But now I'm very happy because
Yes,
there's
sir.
no censorship. And I can truly do the kind of independent journalism that I had been thinking of, believe it or not, since high school. Yun lang. So I like yung point na sinabi ni Carmina.
Thank you.
Enjoy the moment and deal with the consequences later on.
Go ahead and do it, and then what happens, happens. Yeah. And that open it up, and something else will come up, and something else will open up for you. I am watching the clock here, and I think we need to open up to our audience. And we have some questions on the chat, but I would like to find out if, and all our monitors in CMFR can then let us know who should be called on, or jesters should be watching out. Are there any hands being raised in the audience to be able to ask our panelists their own questions, or to give them feedback, give them comments? I only caution that please do not give your long introduction comment before you get to the point. Okay. The floor is now open to the public for questions. Do we have a chat question? Do we also need to do a bit of introspection, says Felipe Salvosa? We've talked a lot about empathy with the audience, but how does that translate to new coverage? Tulfo shows a lot of empathy. He got elected to the Senate. Okay, do you want to comment on that comment?
Ma'am,
Yes.
I would like to comment on that. I think I
Yes.
have to agree with Carmina when she said we should have empathy with our audience, and also to Rambo, since we have to make ourselves very present online. It's the future of journalism. It's really online. Gone were the days of exclusive stories, Ma'am Melinda. Right now, if you break it first online, that's it.
Absolutely.
So how do we engage the people? There is distrust there, but I think for me, the reminder is it is not our job to please them, even if we want to win their trust again. But it is our responsibility to answer their queries. When we do FB Live, while we are covering stories, what's different right now is that audiences are really very reactive and participative. So just to share an experience, when I was covering the inauguration of President Marcos, while I was doing an FB Live on the venue, there were a lot of questions. Traffic ba papunta dyan? Saan ba dadaan papupunta dyan? Those things, I think it is my responsibility to at least look at the questions, read them, answer them, because they want to see it and they want to know it, and only me or us journalists who are in there on site witnessing it firsthand can answer them. And gone were the days really we're just doing our live reports on TV and we don't know what the audience think about what we're saying. This time, whatever we say, they have a follow-up question. Okay, so andyan na ba si Pangulo? What time will he be coming? After the inauguration, what can happen? Is he coming back to Malacanang? Those things, we should answer it. We should engage the media by providing them the information that they want to know.
Right. And be more direct and spontaneous, and at the moment be there. Unfortunately, it's a difficult life. It is going to be even more difficult when you put that challenge to you and say to yourself, I don't have the luxury anymore of not answering, because
Yes.
they will think that I am not listening to them. Now, a little bit of help, I think, from all the other sectors to tell people that these people live a life as well, and they may not be able to answer right away, but be patient. They will engage you in their way and in their time. Yes, Carmina, you're speaking to the point.
Yeah,
Yes?
speaking to the point that Maan just made, and to the question of Felipe, F. Salvosa,
Bota.
yeah, a lot of introspection. Completely, absolutely agree. The reason why these vloggers are getting to their consumers is that these vloggers and the other forces and the propagandists are exploiting their truths. Our job now is to recognize those truths and help them along the way to make the decisions that they need for themselves and those that they love. They're exploiting their truths. That's not what we're going to do. We're going to recognize their truths and build on them.
Thank you, Carmina. We have a question from Facebook. Geraldine, do you want to feed that to us? Is this from Jonathan? Okay. Influencers and content creators sometimes work together in collaborative content. Here's working together. This is also a different kind of solidarity. Is it realistic or possible for newsrooms or even individual journalists to do collaborative reporting? We've been thinking and talking about it for some time now, for years, actually, is what Jonathan says. But are there first steps that we could take towards that? Meaning working across newsrooms. The point is that if you do not have a unified, that everyone is doing it, your message, your single scoop, your single whatever, exclusive, etc., is not heard, period. And working across and making that story, feeding it all to the different parts or different media by your own people will help amplify the right information. Any response to what Jonathan has just said? Is it possible? Can you take this idea home to the newsrooms? So that when we say mainstream media, we're not talking about separate, different communities as well in the mainstream media. Rambo, I have your hand.
At may
It
nauna
was-
po sa akin. Pero bilis lang naman po yung sa akin. It's really the people who are here. I think Jonathan, pwede naman, pero parang at the way that we are operating, what we're used to, parang that's a few steps ahead, because the basic thing of reporting on each other's reporting, for example, Inquirer or TV5 or ABS-CBN got a scoop. We don't report it that, oh, this news outlet has this big scoop that's really important, that we have to also amplify each other's work. We can't even do that right now. We
Why?
keep on amplifying ourselves. Yeah, and that's also something that I'm asking. I think before we can collaborate with each other, we also have to at least like echo each other to amplify each other, because there are many ways to tell the truth. Something that's important for our own audience. Ang nakikita ko lang po for collaboration, it's usually possible when there's financial incentive. Like for example, there's a grant that really tells people you have to pitch in as two newsrooms or whatever. But coming from the own volition of editors, reporters, it's hard in what we're used to. And when it comes to financial and logistical concerns, it's difficult.
Yeah, I just want to amplify the question that Rambo asked. Why can't we do this? Why is it that we do not echo some breaking point that has been done by a rival company, a different company, etc., etc., you can refer to them. Actually, we've always done that in the olden times. We would say, we would not name the news organization, but we would acknowledge that it was brought out by another organization, and we are following it up with our story. I have a hand from Christina, also to speaking to the point. Yes, thank you. Go ahead,
I'd like to react.
Mayan.
I'd
Christina. Yeah,
After Christina.
Christina, and then Mayan.
I'd like to voice out lang po my reaction to that idea of collaboration. I think it is very helpful, lalo na we're branching out towards data journalism, and meron kasing instances na may data na nakuha yung isang reporter from another news outfit na hindi natin nakuha. I think it's helpful if there's collaboration in a sense na mas ma-explain natin ano ba tong data na to and bakit important na malaman ng tao tong data na to. And of course, syempre there are certain people, like for example, sa ABS-CBN, si Sir Edson, who is very well versed sa data analytics. So I think yung mga input na mga gantong professional will help us journalists na hindi pa ganun ka-versed sa pag-report ng data para ma-explain natin ano yung storya behind these figures and why this is important to the public.
Okay, thank you, Tina, because your work has involved working with data, which is not being done by too many people. Yes, there's Edson Lido. And so thank you for that point. And I have Mian as well.
Yes, Melinda, I think I would have to agree to what you said. We're already doing that. We are sharing information, but of course, we are competing networks. Competition has to be there. There should be a healthy competition there. It makes us better journalists. It makes us a better newscast. But there are steps going there in terms of collaboration, which is especially during this time when government officials usually choose who they want to get interviews, choose what network they want to be guested in. So in times like this, it happened just yesterday. A story about Percy Lapid, a story about suspended Bucor chief Gerald Bantag being accused of having a hand on the killing of Percy Lapid. We wanted to have an interview. We've been requesting an interview with him, but he did not and still hasn't granted that interview to us. But he was interviewed exclusive by DZRH. We used it. We asked for permission. We just put a courtesy. We just recognized that, hey, DZRH had this exclusive interview with Gerald Bantag. And we need to air this because without this, the story isn't objective. The story isn't complete. And though we weren't able to get this interview, someone did. And so we're getting it, we're using it. And thank you, DZRH. We're putting a courtesy out there that, hey, General Bantag had an interview with DZRH. And these are the important points that he
Thank you. Thank you, Mayan, because we've been pushing that whole idea for I don't know how long, since social media made it clear that one piece story scoops just sink into the bottom of the sea. I'm sorry, Mike, your hand, the hand that you put up goes against a beige wall. And I'm sorry that I have missed it. I'm sorry to have had you waiting. Mike, please, you have the floor.
Just to echo the point made, I think it's important to recognize really that a lot of our news outlets here in the Philippines still subscribe to the model that we are competing with each other, that we cannot build on a story that was first reported by another outlet. Therefore, we cannot even name the outlet. For example, if you report it on TV, we just say in a radio report. Why can't we name the very outfit that actually put out that report? I think that there needs to be a re-examination also of the way we deal with, not just with our fellow reporters, with other media personnel, because we seem to think that this is a competition, a rush to be first, when we can actually collaborate. And speaking to the point of solidarity that Len was saying earlier, why can't we even be allowed to show support for a colleague from another network or for the other network if it's in peril? Why can't we put out statements on social media in support of someone because our social policies in the newsroom do not allow us to voice that support? That's something to think about, especially as we try to address attacks against the media.
Thank you very much, Mike, for that additional point. And Carmina?
Yeah, just a correction to what Mike said. We name our sources. It's never been a practice for us not name where we got it. That's a time honored tradition in our newsroom, and it is our way of showing respect to our colleagues as well. So we never do that. We never not name where we got it from, or we include it in the narrative, in the story that we're saying. To the point about collaboration, what Jonathan was saying a while ago, I also wanted to say, like what Mean said a while ago, we did it as well on ANC, but it was more because of financial restrictions, because the finances have been choked because of the closure of ABS-CBN. During the last elections, we weren't able to deploy a lot of our reporters as we did in the past years. So we tapped independent journalists like Anthony Esguerra, for example, to help us tell the story because we couldn't be there. So we had to enter into collaborations, into partnerships, but it was only rooted because of the financial restrictions that we had. But I hope there was a different reason to that. And I hope that the reason would be more of a collaborative effort, not just because
of the spirit, because of the spirit and not the money.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyway, for bringing that up, we do have to face all kinds of different issues then as we talk about moving forward. Working together more is an idea that we have been pushing again and again. It isn't just to get that story. It is also, I think, an existential issue. We, or you, we in the media, the mainstream media, working as journalists, are now a threatened institution, a threatened breed, and the future lies in that digital world larger than where we are at this point. And there will be opportunities. I know. Let us just be alive and alert to all of the opportunities and all the windows that open up. I am ready to close this open forum as I haven't gotten any questions from the audience. I have one. Speaking of empathy, is this a comment? May question siya. Okay, one last question before we close it. Speaking of empathy to the audience, some or most news kasi di na nire-represent ang majority ng public kasi na-overlook na yung relevance. Hindi na relevance ang hinahanap. Okay, is that how I understand it? And prominence. Nowadays, mas madami ng news about sa politicians and even show business na minsan di naman significant sa society. Ano pong reaction ninyo tungkol dito? One quick reaction all around and then we shall end this open forum. Thank you very much for that. Shall we go? Just go down the squares that I have in here. Christian, quick.
Mas gusto ko sagutin yung isang tanong mo, eh.
Yeah.
Meron pa bang iba? Okay,
Yeah.
sorry.
Ah.
Pursuing journalism and fighting for our country's rights. Ito, I
Yung
would
chilling
like to
effect,
remain
doubts about
anonymous.
pursuing this profession. I think that this would be more useful. Kasi
Should I
yung,
still continue pursuing journalism? All right, you want to
sorry
answer
Malaya,
that question?
not
That's fine.
to downplay your concern. Totoo
we will-
naman yan.
we
But that's
will
an old
do
problem, infodemic, no? So wala tayong magagawa kasi there's so many information sources nowadays. So the challenge is for us to provide more of what the people need.
Should
than
I
just what they
continue to pursue?
Uh,
Is the question you want? Please go at it, Christian.
Sige, done. So, the chilling effect would always be there. So, ang sa akin kasi, don't lose your idealism as a journalism student. You have to keep that. Along the way, you become jaded. You will realize that some of the things that you learned in school would have to be unlearned out there in the field. But try to be a better journalist every day. Don't be too presumptuous. Don't feel that you can save the world. But you can still always make a big difference. Wag lang masyado messianic because that won't differentiate us from the populists who end up being dictators, no? So just know the limits of what you can do. and put together people like you in cooperation with other like-minded individuals, core groups within newsrooms who are actually fighting all these kinds of binarities out there, definitely the industry would be in a much better place later on.
Okay, so there are questions asking about how to deal with threats. So I will do the closing. No, sorry, we will do the closing by each one of you choosing what question you respond to, and just keep your responses or advice or counsel short. Carmina, can I just go down my screen?
In closing, and in relation also to the question of Amara, one practical advice I could give is be financially independent. So you can throw out the questions, follow a story without being beholden to anyone, even if you're a salaried employee of a news organization. Just be financially independent. Have a side hustle that not connected to your job, to our profession, so that when everything crumbles, and it will at one point, when people wouldn't want to touch you with a 10-foot pole, you can walk away with your principles intact.
Thank you. Next, Rambo.
To the question of pursuing journalism, alam ko na maraming estudyante dito, we need you. We need you with us. We will really appreciate you, blood, in our profession. And if it's not proof enough, we are already here, a stable of journalists facing you. We are ready to welcome you in our fold. We always need new blood. When it comes to fear, sinabi rin ni Carmina na napakahirap maging journalist. You have to be financially independent talaga. That's a reality. Kaya din sinasabi ko sa mga estudyante na tinatanong ako, sulit pa rin po ba or gusto ko po talaga maging journalist? Do not be so hard on yourself if you can't pursue journalism now. What matters is you're pursuing good wherever you are. So you don't have to be with us immediately, but as long as you believe in journalism, in democracy, whatever space you are occupying, I believe that already matters. Thank you.
Christina? Christina?
I'd like to react po dun sa comment ni Malaya regarding the
Go
relevance
ahead,
po ng
go ahead.
audience. I agree na sometimes sa sobrang dami ng balita na kailangan ilabas, nawawalan na ng boses or hindi na natin napapakita kung ano bang meaning ito sa tao. So I think there are stories naman, especially those that are explainers or the long form stories that try to explain bakit ba mahalaga yung mga storya na to sa mga tao. And there are journalists naman who make an effort to interview people and include their insights sa mga issues na nire-report natin every day.
Thank you, Mike.
Just to that point, just to add to what Christina said, I think while it's important to actually know what people want, what people need. It's been a long time, it's been a long debate in journalism. Do we give the people what they want, or do we give the people what they need? And we also have to do some self-introspection. Who are we to actually decide what to give these people, what kind of information to give to these people? So there's a bit of introspection there that we need to do. But I guess to the question of whether do we still want to stay in journalism? Do we want to be a journalist? It really all boils down to why do you want to be a journalist and to be here despite the threats? The attacks will always be there. It will morph from physical attacks before it can become an online attack. But if you still want to do what journalists do, then join us. But again, I also agree that you need to be also financially independent if you have to pursue this profession.
When you say financially independent, I'd like to add live simply. And you will
Yes,
be
that's true.
financially independent. Let's have Len. Len, very quickly, if you wish to add.
Yes, the challenge for us really is how to make the relevant interesting. And on the point of being financially independent, where we can't relate to that because we are a non-profit media outfit. But I would like to point out that it is also important for journalists to push for their economic rights and welfare. It's not just about having a sideline to be able to pursue journalism. Well, that is our situation right now. But that we really want to work toward making journalism a viable profession by organizing ourselves into unions, perhaps, or pushing really for our economic conditions.
Okay, thank you, Len. On that point, unfortunately, in the Philippines, we have never been able to raise news organizations solely dependent on subscribers and readers who want to pay, for the content that you provide. It's been done in Indonesia. Unfortunately, we don't have that model. It's been done in Thailand. Unfortunately, we have not yet gone into that model. And now I have Mayan, please.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with Christian. Chilling effect is there. I mean, I wouldn't tell the students not to fear because it's scary out there. I guess for me, the tip is be in touch with reality before you pursue a career in journalism. Aside from the threats and killings out there, remember that there are inherent dangers with the job. For example, covering the pandemic. At the height of the pandemic, it is when public was advised not to go out. But that was also the time when journalists had to go out and gather news. We are also human beings. We can be infected by COVID-19, but we had to go out. Are we scared? We are scared. But like what Mike said, you always have to go back to why you are here. And for me, it all boils down to two. Passion for the job, passion to tell the truth. Truth is the lifeline of this job. It's scary out there. There are there is a chilling effect, but at the end of the day, we just have to pursue the truth. And now more than ever, our role as journalists is very crucial. And now more than ever, the truth shall prevail.
And thank you for that. I thank the panel, each one of you, and you will not leave us because we will call you back in the second portion of the program. I now announce a 5-minute break for everyone. We shall see you in 5 minutes. we are ready to begin the second part of our program. It is my pleasure and honor this morning to call on President of the Ateneo de Manila University, Father Roberto Yap of the Society of Jesus. He will make what I think has been described by Jimmy Ongpin as remarks of circumstance about Ateneo's partnership with CMFR to produce and present this program.
Thank you, Melinda. Good morning to all.
Good morning.
Distinguished panelists, our courageous journalists and media practitioners, colleagues in the academe, dear students and participants, good morning to all. Jaime V. Ongpin, throughout his life, fought for democracy, truth, and justice. He was one of the first to oppose the Marcos dictatorship and even wrote a famous letter about it, which the Asian Wall Street Journal published in 1981. He also supported Veritas, the news weekly that sought to speak out against the regime. Veritas, or Latin for truth. Social media has helped amplify our voices and opinions to a global reach. But in the process, it has created a storm cloud that threatens to push aside facts in favor of fake news, lies, and propaganda. For 162 years now, Ateneo de Manila has stood by the truth and will continue to do so. As educators and formators, we will carry on with our mission of forming young people imbued with the Ignatian spirit, men and women who will learn, lead, and serve others. We strive to nurture an environment that teaches and encourages our students to be discerning and thoughtful. And so in this age of information fog, we hope to help our students become digital critical thinkers. The Jaime V. Ongpin Journalism Seminar is a testament to our collective commitment to protect press freedom and promote media ethics. On behalf of Ateneo de Manila University, I salute Dr. Melinda Quintos de Jesus and the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility for their commitment to upholding press freedom, promoting responsible journalism, and encouraging journalistic excellence. I thank as well Mrs. Maria Isabel Ongpin and the Ongpin family for their generosity and unwavering support of responsible journalism. Jaime V. Ongpin fought for Veritas. Let us seize this moment to continue implementing good practices to uphold the truth and protect responsible and ethical journalism. Maraming salamat at magandang umaga sa inyong lahat.
Thank you very much, Father Yap. And we hope to see you again in our first face-to-face Jaime V. Ongpin Journalism Seminar program next year.
Certainly. Looking forward to it.
Thank you. To follow up on Father Yap's remarks, the program itself explores the importance of the interaction between media and public. And as in the case of Jaime V. Ongpin, an individual who was not a journalist, but saw the importance of the role of the press in addressing the critical problems in that period in the early 80s when the nation was awakened to the truth of their country. It was then in crisis. Oil prices had spiked, stalling business growth and dragging down the economy. And Jimmy Ongpin openly criticized policies and practices and its effects in the country. He pointed to the crony press, which restricted the flow of information and challenged the monopoly over news by newspapers owned by members of the Marcos family and his favored friends. I had the privilege of seeing Jimmy Ongpin at work to support one of the weekly papers, yes, Veritas News Weekly from 1983 to 1988. He raised the funds to cover our costs and held the weekly meetings of the editors with the board of advisors, who then also had much information in their circles. He would have made an ideal publisher, as he demonstrated his respect for editorial independence, considering always how the editor-in-chief had to bear more consequences He always said editorial decisions are made by editorial. We were then led by Felix Bautista, a veteran newspaperman who understood and appreciated the wisdom of Jimmy's policy. He also believed in consolidating the alternative press as a force and would ask us editors to invite other editors and publishers of the other alternative publications, Mr. and Ms. Special Edition, Raul Lacsin's Business Day, and Malaya, so that they could be part of the special briefings or developments to which the Veritas Group was privy. For myself, the best memories are made up from his weekly notes on the margins of news magazine, which he read from page to page with exclamation points, question marks, suggestions for other related articles that could be done by the staff. He was also pointed in his criticism when he thought an article could have been better. CMFR presents a visual slideshow of Jimmy Ongpin in life. The experience of working with Jimmy Ongpin illustrates the role of an engaged public working with journalists so society can consolidate the power of the press whenever it is necessary to do so. When the press is besieged, it becomes unable to fulfill its role as a steady vanguard or a vigilant watchdog of power. Actually, the quality of the press does not lie only in the hands of journalists. The rest of society shares the burden of supporting freedom because it is the basis of all truthful reporting. And Jimmy exemplified the power of the non-journalists to engage with journalists so they can do a better job and reach out to do the more difficult tasks. This year, the CMFR monitored the press coverage of the campaign and elections. A critical mass in the press community believed that the country was facing what was described a consequential election for the country's democratic system, and felt that the media resources and energy should support the effort of informing the voter with accounts about the records of candidates and their capacity for public service to support a wiser vote. And yet, over 50% of the stories on the campaign were concentrated on campaign events, rallies, which actually carried the news that the candidates and their campaign managers had packaged for voters' consumption. It had become a habit to do so, and the custom, despite the effort and the commitment to go against that tide, it was simply too hard to break. Sadly, however, the public did not complain, or did so only amongst themselves, not as loudly as they should, so that the media could hear. When CMFR receives complaints about how media cover a story, those in the news business can only say, but this is what we are told the public wants to see. Again, our vision for growing a quality press involves more than the press. We need to get more public feedback about the news service that Filipinos deserve if we are to grow and strengthen our democracy. Our highlight in this morning's program is our presentation of certificates, which all 7 journalists will receive. The Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility recognizes Cristina Eloisa Baclig, Carmina Constantino, Christian Esguera, Mean Los Baños, Mike Navallo, Len Olea, and Rambo Talabong, and the words for the outstanding coverage of the most relevant issues of our times, which help Filipinos to better understand the complex environment that confronts them as citizens, thus enlarging the role of the free press as a pillar of democracy in the Philippines, and for participating as a panelist in the 2022 Jaime B. Ongpin Journalism Seminar. Each panelist receives an honorarium of 20,000 pesos, a token of recognition for the service they provide the public and for their efforts to overcome pressures and restrictions of all kinds. The certificates are given on behalf of other members of the Board of Trustees of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility. Each trustee plays a role in managing CMFR, supervising and overseeing the administration, especially in the area of keeping good financial accounts. It is also a relief to be able to call on a number of them who are journalists still in practice to consult on some issues as these come up. And these are Francis Estrada, Edling Gao, Tina Monzon Palma, Lisa Periquet, Vergel Santos, and Luis Teodoro, and myself. It is now my pleasure to call on screen the Honorable Colin Townsend, Charge d'Affaires of the Embassy of Canada, who will announce the final decision for the Marshall McLuhan Fellow for 2022.
First of all, good morning, everybody. And let me, right off the bat, congratulate everyone on a fantastic discussion. Listening to the panelists today, hearing the passion in their voice, the sincerity of their remarks, and clearly their commitment to journalistic integrity, one can't help but be inspired. And so I feel quite privileged to be here. It's been a very tumultuous year in the Philippines, particularly in the field of media and journalism. We began a year with a courageous Filipina journalist winning a Nobel Peace Prize for her commitment to truth. We subsequently saw waves of targeted actions meant to suppress the freedom of select media outlets. We saw, of course, a very consequential election that brought into focus questions around media access, transparency, misinformation, disinformation, and a rapidly changing media environment. We also saw, with tragic consequences, how states have weaponized misinformation and disinformation, further confounding the environment in which journalists must operate. Russia's illegal and unjustifiable invasion of Ukraine was a particular case that the effects of which we continue to deal with today. Quite apart from these wider sweeping events, we have seen, of course, the continuation of harassment, threats, online vilification of journalists, and of course, the ongoing challenge of doing the job amidst against the backdrop of the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm particularly happy to be here with you as my country, Canada, is this year the co-chair of the Media Freedom Coalition and chair of the Freedom Online Coalition. Our country believes firmly that democracy to flourish, freedom of the press and freedom of expression must be respected. This includes ensuring the protection of journalists, their safety, and those of human rights defenders, civil activists, and political opposition. We at the Embassy of Canada remain very concerned with the threats, risks, and violence that journalists face here as they do their work. Media actors should not have to fear retribution for being truthful in pursuing and reporting their stories. As our Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau, said, a free-thinking, independent, and respected media is the cornerstone of any democracy. One cannot exist without the other. It's for this reason that Canada has and will continue to defend press freedom and condemn all attempts to stifle the media. We saw this most recently and tragically in the aftermath of the brutal assassination of a popular broadcaster right here in Metro Manila. As co-chair of the Media Freedom Coalition, Canada, together with the Netherlands, issued a statement deploring the killing and urging authorities to swift action on the Mabasa case. We have continued to engage the authorities and will maintain constant contact with them to ensure that those responsible for this heinous crime are held to account. Perhaps moving to happier territory. Obviously, today I am thrilled to be here on behalf of our Embassy of Canada team in partnership with the Centre for Media Freedom and Responsibility to announce our Marshall McLuhan Fellow for Excellence in Journalism. We started this program back in 1997, so this is a big year. It marks 25 years of continuous partnership between Canada and the Philippines in promoting responsible journalism, responsible media, and of course, championing the case of media freedom. The selected fellow will undertake a speaking tour in at least 4 Canadian cities in the second quarter of 2023, where the fellow will meet with media counterparts, explore contemporary social and political issues with members of our government, civil society, our parliament, to bring the work that is being done here in the Philippines to Canada, but also to ensure that we are sharing and talking about our shared challenges. Today, in the panel discussion, our panelists spoke about the need for collaboration and the need to confront common challenges together. And I couldn't help but reflect on the fact that, of course, it's important for the journalist community here to work together, but also in partnership with your international friends and allies, including states, civil society organizations, governments, and of course, international media outlets. I am truly grateful for our partners in making this program possible today. I am pleased to say that for the 15th year, the Marshall McLuhan Fellowship is also being sponsored, I need to note, by Sun Life of Canada, who is our primary sponsor for the Canada component of the McLuhan Fellowship. Now, as always, deciding on the McLuhan Fellow is an enormous challenge. And I think everybody in the audience today, having heard this panel, can attest to the incredible intelligence, skill, and ability of all of the journalists here. And as I said earlier, I think their conviction to truth shone through. Ultimately, we choose the individual whom we believe has displayed the qualities of media responsibility against the challenging backdrop I've outlined, an unflinching commitment to speak truth to power, and consistency in ferreting out the most complicated issues of the day. We also, of course, look for that stirring courage to ask the tough questions and speak truth to power. Consequently, this year's McLuhan Fellowship goes to a journalist whose passion for the craft has followed the ebbs and flows of the news industry over the past 2.5 decades, and whose wise instincts to clarify and challenge statements and assumptions has helped shed light into issues, thereby shielding the public from the worst impacts of disinformation and misinformation, in what has been a highly consequential year. I'm honored, therefore, to present this year's McLuhan Fellowship to Carmina Constantino Torres. Congratulations, Carmina.
Picture there.
Hey, am I allowed to speak? Thanks.
Carmina, yes, you may
Oh, thank
speak
you.
briefly.
Thank you, Colin. Thank you to all the co-panelists, to all the budding journalists in this virtual room. I think the future of journalism is vibrant because as we are here, you are there too. Just continue doing the work, and I hope to see you in our newsroom soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Colin. Thank you, Carmina, for speaking again from your heart, and congratulations.
Thank you.
On behalf of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility, we are also happy to announce the award of distinction to a news organization for its courage and resolve in the face of the overwhelming challenges that confront truth tellers as they provide Filipinos the information they need in these times of crisis and uncertainty. For reinforcing the journalistic principle of going beyond the surface of news, supplying the context, analysis, and interpretation of government policies and programs affecting people's lives, for keeping true to the honored tradition of the alternative press, of giving the marginalized and disempowered a voice that can be heard, the pioneering spirit that reports on news left out by conventional coverage, calling those responsible to provide for the basic concerns and needs of so many Filipinos so that all citizens can help build a true democracy in our country. The award of distinction comes with a check of 50,000 pesos, and the recognition goes to Bulat Lat. Len Olea receives the award on behalf of her organization.
Thank you so much. I don't know what to
And,
say.
You have done the work. You don't have to say very much at all. And thank you for having been part of our panel. I now call, as we close the program, I now call on Ms. Lisa Ongpin Periquet for her closing remarks.
Hello and good morning today to all the participants of the 21st Jaime V. Ongpin Journalism Seminar, especially to the future journalists out there for whom this yearly session is meant to inspire and encourage you to practice this most noble and difficult profession. I'm here as the representative of the family of Jaime V. Ongpin, who truly believed that the free press is one of the pillars of democracy. He carried out this conviction by establishing Veritas during the anti-Marcos years, a publication meant to encourage high journalistic standards and promote free speech. Thank you to Melinda Quintos de Jesus of CMFR and Father Bobby Yap of the Ateneo for the recounting of my father's role in democracy and the free press in our country. Really, truly appreciate your remembering of his role. Listening to the panel discuss the burning issues in journalism today, I can't help but reflect on how these issues are still present today as they were in my father's time of the anti-Marcos years. Among them, disinformation, self-censorship, threats to life, demonization of the media, and others. There are new components to the mix to deal with, such as the multiple social media platforms, both a bane and an opportunity to my mind. Another is the prevalence of fake news, very much an offshoot of the quick and easy communication afforded by these social media platforms. My point here today being that there will always be these headwinds in varying degrees of intensity in this world. It is therefore imperative that journalism practitioners such as yourselves keep up the standards of the profession that were discussed today. I would like to thank, as always, the longtime supporters of the Jaime V. Ongpin Journalism Seminar throughout these 21 years, the National Endowment for Democracy, the Ateneo de Manila University, the Embassy of Canada in the Philippines, and Sun Life of Canada. I would also like to express my sincere thanks to our panel members today, the hardworking staff and board of the Center for Media Freedom and Responsibility. To our audience of possible future journalists today, I thank you for your engagement with the issues. I would like to encourage you to continue to engage with journalism, whether as practitioners or as a discerning audience. I hope today's panelists and warriors for a free press have inspired you as they have inspired me. Thank you and good day.
Thank you very much, Lisa, for those words and for looking ahead with such optimism and calling out to the future generation. Let me close with an important acknowledgement for the support of the Washington-based National Endowment of Democracy, or the NED, and again for the continuing partnership with the Ateneo de Manila University, along with other anonymous donors to help us continue with this program. This program is not possible without the hard work of the CMFR staff. Lara for project coordination, Carol for keeping records of our costs and expenses, for the staff work and the technical support of Penzer, Geraldine, Leah, Andy, Terrence, Bernard, and Rosanna, whose energy and dedication inspire me always to keep on going. At this point, may I call on everyone to turn on their cameras so that we can take our group photo. And how many pages is that, Jester? Thank you, Lisa. Can we have the group page photos, please?
Jester and Will, okay kayo?
Are we doing this or are we not doing this?
Yes, ma'am. So,
Yes, ma'am.
let me just call on Servin.
Okay.
Ayan, for page 1, in 3, 2, 1, smile. Okay, another one. In 3, 2, 1, smile. Another one in 3, 2, 1, and smile. Last page po in 3, 2, 1, and smile.
Thank you very much, Jester. I don't know about you, but I was smiling for every single page. Once again,
Napansin namin.
to our wonderful audience, and for all who have followed this program through the years, I hope you will stay with us and look forward to better days in so many ways. Next year, we shall do a physical venue, and God willing, we shall do that. Once again, thank you all for listening, and we hope to see you again next year.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Congrats,
Congrats.
Casey.
Congrats.
Congrats, Bulatlat.
Uy,
Salamat
Congrats,
Bye.
Carmina.
Thank you, guys. For country, for always, guys.
And Carol.
Carmina, pagod na lang ng
Congratulations.
food, ah.
Congrats
Sino
to
ito?
CMFR's